That's not very demure and cutesy of him. Hey nerds, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing another episode of Reading Rouge, the series on my channel where I simultaneously put on my makeup and do a book review. I just realized I haven't done that for the past 2 Reading Rouges. It's okay, but I fixed it now. And on today's episode, we're going to be covering Cackle by Rachel Harrison. But before we get into that, please leave a like. It really helps me and I appreciate it. Thank you. Now let's get into this. So if you're not new on the channel, this may look a little familiar to you. And if it does, this is because this was one of the books in my very first half price books haul on the channel, like over a year ago. So coming right back around. So I forgot to write down my own synopsis like for this video, so I'm just gonna read the book jacket. Let's go, come on. All her life, Annie has played it nice and safe. After being unceremoniously dumped by her longtime boyfriend, Annie seeks a fresh start. She accepts a new teaching position and moves from Manhattan to a small village upstate. She's stunned by how perfect and picturesque the town is. The people are all friendly and warm. Her new apartment is dreamy, too, aside from the oddly persistent spider infestation. Then Annie meets Sophie. Beautiful, charming, magnetic Sophie, who takes a special interest in Annie and wants to be her friend. More importantly, she wants Annie to stop apologizing and start living for herself. That's how she lives. Annie can't help but gravitate toward the self-possessed Sophie and starts to spend more and more time with her despite the fact that the rest of the town folks seem a little afraid of her. And like, okay, there are some things. Sophie's appearance is uncanny and ageless. Her mansion in the middle of the woods feels a little unearthly, and she doesn't seem to wield a certain power, but she couldn't be, could she? So if you couldn't tell by the title and like the little synopsis I just read, spoiler alert, Sophie's a witch, bitch. Okay, and yeah, lots of stuff going on there. So I started this book in late June, and then I got very distracted by life, and so I restarted it at the beginning of July, and I just finished it 2 days ago. And guys, let me tell you, I am obsessed. I love this book, like, very much. And also, if you're new on the channel, I want to tell you something about myself. I love all things spooky, scary skeletons. I love vampires. I love witches. I've always loved witches. And then, like, imagine my excitement when I first found this book all that time ago. I was like, oh, you sold me. I'm gonna go over some characters real quick before we get into, you know, the plot and everything. So there's our main character, Annie. She's 30 years old. She's described to be very tall and gangly, you know, very awkward. She's not very self-confident and very self-conscious. She has separation anxiety and just anxiety in general. And she just believes that she doesn't deserve anything good for herself. Like, if something, like, bad were to happen to her, she'd be like, okay, yeah, I deserve that. Then there's Sophie, her new friend when she moves from Manhattan to this little dreary town. She's very, imagine her like very, you know, I don't know. I don't know how to describe her. Like, Annie describes her all the time as like this very gorgeous, like unbelievably gorgeous woman. She's a little older, she's very wise, she's just like, you know, she's like an enchantress, like no pun intended, but she's very much an enchantress in the way that she carries herself and how she, you know, presents herself. It's, yeah, that's how she is. And then there's Sam, the ex-boyfriend. We'll get into that later. I don't want to talk too much about him. There's some other side characters that really don't, I mean, they play a part in this, obviously, but, you know, there's not much to know about them. We'll get to them when we get into the plot. So it starts with Annie going to a palm reader on her birthday, and she doesn't get any good news. The palm reader says her future is shrouded in darkness and uncertainty. Now, for those of you who do believe in, like, you know, fortune tellers and palm readers, I'm sure that's not something that you would want to hear, especially on your birthday. And so of course this scares Annie. And then also in this introductory chapter we find out that Annie is living with her ex. Like they're living in the same place still. And the reason they broke up is because her ex, Sam, he sees them more as friends and not lovers. And I was just like, this was like, what, maybe 15 pages in, and I'm already like, okay, I can tell I'm not going to be a fan of Sam. But it's time for new beginnings because Annie is about to move away for a new job opportunity. Next chapter, and Annie arrives to her new home in a little town called Rowan. Now, I don't know if this is like a real town or like a real little village because she's coming from Manhattan, but I don't know. I probably should look it up. I don't think I'm gonna. And like I just read in the synopsis, it's a very picturesque, like perfect little village. It's so like homey and warm and cuddly, kind of Hallmark-ish, but sleepy too. Not like creepy sleepy, but like sleepy in the sense that, oh, like it's so, you know, it's so cozy here, and that's what it's giving. It's what it's giving. Like think a mix between Coraline and the town from Hocus Pocus, with a little bit of Greendale from Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. It's giving like picturesque, Hallmarkish, but sleepy. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying. So as Annie is exploring her new apartment, she befriends a little spider that she finds inside. And after she finds the first spider, she finds spiders literally everywhere. Like they're coming out in droves in this point. And then of course, like any person would do after moving to a new town, she goes around and she explores it a little bit. And then she also starts her new job as a teacher, and it was a rough first week for Annie. Being that her week was so rough, she goes to the liquor store to self-medicate. And I was like, real. And this is where she meets Sophie for the first time. Like, let me read what she said about Miss Sophie here. "You don't want that. The voice comes from behind me. I'm not startled by it because it's a lovely voice, the tone of it. It's an instant bomb. I turn around. The floorboards wail under my weight, but when she walks, they make no sound at all. She's the most beautiful person I've ever seen. Easily. Dark waves cascade down to her waist. So much hair, thick and shiny. How does it shine like that? It's like her hair is emitting its own light. She has big almond eyes, an ethereal hazel, two pools of amber. She has long black lashes and her eyebrows are epic, full, lush, steeply arched. I want to touch them. Her cheekbones are high, pronounced, nose delicate and straight. Her lips are extensive, the twin contours of her face. They hold a natural color, a rosy pink. I doubt she's wearing any lipstick or any makeup at all. If she is, whatever it is, I would buy it. Her skin is a new state of matter. I can't tell how old she is, maybe late 30s, early 40s. She smiles at me, a pleasant, frank smile. Her cheeks round and soft lines appear at the edges of her eyes. Hopefully that helped with the description of how beautiful Sophie is and how beautiful Annie thinks Sophie is. This is their first encounter, and then Sophie, after talking to Annie for a little bit, she invites her to go to the farmer's market with her that Saturday. And Annie's like, sure, whatever you say, gorgeous. So after, you know, her first encounter with Sophie, she goes home, she gets drunk, and then the chapter ends with her seeing an apparition in the hallway. Never fun. Next chapter, and Annie is having a little trouble adjusting to her new job. As we find out from Annie, teaching teens is not easy. So these little rotten bastards, they've been making bird noises at Annie because her last name is Crane. She has to deal with a lot of, you know, disruptive students, but by the second day, she gets them, you know, under control a little. And then after coming home from that, she finds another spider in her kitchen. Some of these chapters are very short, and you know, some of them may seem like I didn't need to include them in this video, but everything plays a part in like the bigger scheme of things. So some of these chapters that I go through are going to be really short because not much happened in them. And then some of these details are going to seem useless, but trust me, it all works together in the end, so I can't, there's not much I can skip. And as you've noticed, spiders are going to be a pretty common theme in this book, so remember, always remember to, you know, keep track of the spiders. Next chapter, and it's Saturday now, And Annie goes to the farmer's market to meet Sophie. And then as they're walking around, Annie takes notice on how everyone's either in awe of Sophie or afraid of her, like she has some kind of, you know, hold over them. And at this point, like, I'm reading and I'm thinking that she's hypnotized the entire town or something like that, because I knew that she was gonna be the witch, but I'm just like, does she have like all the townspeople like hypnotized, like under her spell or something? Because like, why is everybody either in awe of her, treating her like royalty, or why is everyone scared of her? Like, it's like, does she have everybody hypnotized up in here? So they're bonding right now, and Annie tells Sophie about her recent breakup with Sam and how it really broke her heart because he was so nonchalant, and she's not a nonchalant person. Annie has very big emotions, okay? She's a true romantic at heart. And of course, Sophie, with her many years of wisdom, she gives Annie some really good advice. And then after that, Sophie invites Annie over to her house. And so as they're leaving, she notices like the town people being very like sweet and subservient to Sophie. And she asks, she's like, okay, what's the deal? Are you famous or something? And then Sophie reveals that she basically has like sway, I guess, over the whole town because she's the landlord. She's everybody's landlord or something like that. That's how they describe it in the book. I don't know. You know, lots of land, lots of money, and responsibility. That's what she says to Annie. And Sophie is like just super charming, especially with Annie. She's always giving her a compliment and, you know, saying how beautiful she is, and she's just very reassuring and sweet to Annie. It's almost romantic in a sense. I was like, please let this end in a sapphic. At this point in the book, I'm like, please let this be sapphic. Give me that, please. I would love to see that. And I think the feeling is mutual in a sense, like, you know, that like tinge of romance, because Annie literally cannot get over how beautiful she is, and she's just like, she's starstruck or something. And then, you know, they spend some more time together, and Sophie opens up about, you know, her mother who is no longer with us, and then more about her and Sam's relationship. And then as they are getting super comfortable with one another, getting to know each other, it starts to storm. And then Sophie's like, okay, you cannot travel in this weather, you should stay here tonight. Oh, I forgot to mention this. Sophie lives in this big old bad bitch mansion in the middle of the woods. Yeah. And of course Annie is hesitant about staying because she barely knows Sophie, and she's like, I don't know. So she agrees to stay ultimately. She's like, what's it gonna hurt? So after chilling like with wine and movies, Annie decides to go to bed. And when she's changing into her PJs, she sees a face in the mirror behind her. And then when she turns around, of course, there's nobody there. And then later that night, Annie has another instance of paranormal activity, and it's hard for her to go to sleep. I mean, duh, like, I wouldn't want to go to sleep if there was ghosts hovering over me either. And we also see here that Annie hasn't fully let go of her old life because she's still thinking about Manhattan and piece of shit Sam. So the next morning, Sophie takes Annie to the local diner and they have a little bit of breakfast. And again, Annie notices how everyone is acting, you know, kind of strange around Sophie, especially the owner of the diner. Sophie gives her more advice. She's like, girl, you don't need to have a man to be happy. You can be single and as happy as can be. Like, you don't need him. You don't need no man. And I was like, yeah, Sophie, tell her like it is. Annie says, all I want is love. And then Sophie tells her about herself in a nice way. She calls her out. She's like, girl, like, that's great and everything, but it's not, you know, the end all be all. And Sophie's like, no, girl, what you really want is validation, which is fine, but like, no one can give that to you but yourself. And I was like, okay. And this is where I caught on and realized that Annie cannot function on her own. Like, she's one of those girls who needs a boyfriend. Like, she can't be single. And I've known many people like that in my life. I'm just like, oh no, no, not again, damn it. Not even in the sense of like having a boyfriend, but she just can't be alone. Like, she needs to be in someone's company, which no one wants to be lonely, but like, she literally cannot function without the company of someone else. But after this little conversation, Annie feels at ease and she's grateful to have a friend like Sophie. Okay, so I'm looking at my notes. I'm looking at my notes for a second, and I forgot I wrote this down. I said, pause in all caps real quick because I need to add this. This is what I said. How hasn't Annie figured out that Sophie's a witch? It's not like she hides it. Sophie has repeatedly said she's old, but she doesn't look like it. She told a storm, stop that, and it listened to her. And then she asked Annie if she wanted her to curse the students that were giving her a hard time. Annie, I love you, girl, but you're dense as Because this is why I love, like, taking notes during reading, because, like, I can put down what I'm feeling at that moment or what page I'm on, and now that I'm remembering, like, the plot again, yeah, like, what the f***? How have you not caught on yet? So it's the next day, and Annie's goal is just to get through work, and then that was going fine until the noises in the classroom started again. So she finds the culprit, who's making the noise, some rotten teenage boy, but before he can make another sound, he starts choking and gagging and, like, contorting in an unnatural way. And then something starts to come out of his mouth. It's like, you know, this big, huge ball of, like, blackness. Lo and behold, it's another f***ing spider. He threw up a spider. That's not very demure and cutesy of him. So, of course, everybody in the classroom is like, what just happened? What did we just see? So after this eventful day, Annie goes back to the liquor store because she's like, I need a drink after what I saw in class today. I can't. And instead of finding Sophie there, because she assumed that she owned the place when she first ran into Sophie there, she finds another woman, a little old lady. And like everybody else, this old lady is afraid at the mention of Sophie's name. And Annie cannot stop thinking about what happened, you know, today in school. And then that's when she remembers her conversation with Sophie in the diner the day before. She remembered when Sophie asked, do you want me to curse your students for making fun of you? And then her head starts spinning and she's like, okay, you know what? No, that's not what happened. I'm just psyching myself out. I'm like, you finally put two and two together. Like, how else do you explain someone coughing up a damn spider, Annie? Like, I don't understand. So the next day, she visits the vice principal's office, Jill, and, you know, they get to talking. So when she's trying to check on the student that coughed up the spider, she finds out that that student wants to transfer out of her class. And I'm like, how? Because you were the one causing problems all semester, but you throw up a little spider and now you want to leave. Alright. And Jill was kind of condescending about this conversation because she thinks that Annie has something to do with him throwing up the spider. And she's like, yeah, maybe it's for the best. And I'm just like, but... So it's the next chapter and Sophie's coming over to Annie's house to make dinner for her. And Annie's a little bit hesitant because of what happened with the student and she thinks that Sophie has something to do with it. And so Sophie notices how Annie is acting, and so her calm, cool, and collected demeanor that we've seen thus far, it just goes away because she turns into like this frantic and panicky type of person, which is very unnatural for Sophie. She thinks Annie is gonna leave her because she thinks that she scared her away. And I'm like, whoa, girl, I mean, explain yourself because what the fuck? So at this moment, to like save her friendship with Annie, Sophie starts to reveal some of her powers to Annie. She finally drops the cloth and is like, okay, I'm a witch. It's true. And naturally this is freaking Annie out because what is happening? And then during this whole like magic show, she's like repeatedly saying like, you know I wouldn't hurt you, right? I would never hurt you. And then she's like, okay, I find that hard to believe, but like, you are literally like doing things that I didn't think that were possible right in front of my eyes. I don't know what to do. And all of these feelings are valid because I would be a little freaked out as well. Then finally Sophie admits to cursing the student. She's like, okay, fine, I did it. And Annie's like, you know what? Okay, fine, I'll still be your friend. But Annie doesn't really know if that was like sincere or if it was out of fear because she's coming to terms with Sophie being a witch and finding out all this stuff. She's like, okay, I'll still be your friend. I think she was really afraid to lose her as a friend, but she's still kind of apprehensive because she just found out that her best friend is a witch. And at the end of this chapter, they both entertain the idea of cursing Sam. Because men ain't shit, so yeah. I get it. Oh, I forgot to add this. So by this point in time in the book, we find out that all the spiders are sentient and like they're controlled by Sophie. And she can also communicate with the spiders. So yeah, they're like her familiars, you know? If you don't know what a familiar is, Google is free. So the next chapter and the next day, Sophie and Annie go back to the farmer's market, and everyone is a little less friendly than they were before during that first go round. And it's just because, you know, Sophie is with Annie, so they're not really pleased to see Sophie. So after going to the farmer's market, they go back to Sophie's house to chill, and then this is when Annie gets a text from Sam. And so after trying to read it twice, Sophie like snatches the phone out of her hand, like, you know, using her witchy woo-woo power. She's like, girl, what are you doing? Long story short, Sophie tells Annie to move the on, like, get over it. He's trash, you need to move on. And the way that she snaps at her is kind of possessive, and I was like, Sophie, like, like, I don't like those types of best friends. And I'm saying that, and I used to be one of those best friends. Ew, like, and reading it from this perspective, I see how wrong I was. Like, just ew, gross. Sorry, I didn't mean to get all anecdotal, but And so we find out here that when Annie is alone in Sophie's house, she feels very uneasy because of her little running with the face in the mirror and all the paranormal activity. She thinks the house is haunted, but Sophie, you know, dissuades her. She's like, no, it's not. It's just an old house. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of, girl. Okay, no, I have to redo this eye. Like, oh, see, this is what I wanted to do. And that, I don't know what that is. So while swimming in Miss Sophie's indoor pool, something grabs her by the ankle and tries to pull her underwater. Something that looks like a person, so there's another ghost. And after seeing Annie almost drown, Sophie admits that the house is a little haunted, and her excuse for like keeping this a secret from Annie, she was like, well, if you knew, you wouldn't want to come back. No shit, you think? And she's like, okay, fine, I'll get rid of the ghosts if it's gonna make you uncomfortable. How considerate of you. Like, what? If the world was ending, I wanna be next to you. If the world was ending, I wanna be next. So it's the next chapter, and fall is approaching. The leaves are falling, the trees are turning. It's Papanaki. Annie tells us that now she's grown accustomed to the routine that she's made for herself in her new little life. So Annie's students are scared of her now. That's great. Ever since the spider incident, they ain't been making them bird noises no more. They respect her, but it's only out of fear. They also think that Annie has something to do with the spiders coming out of that one kid's mouth, but she's like, you know what? But on the bright side, they're behaving now, So after finding out that Annie is single, Jill, the vice principal, she's like, girl, come on this double date with me and my husband and our friend Pascal. Like, come on, it'll be fun. Like, And then we get another iteration of how Annie can't be alone. And I'm just like, oh, there were some places in this book where Annie was giving Carrie Bradshaw. If you know, you know. And in a moment of weakness, Annie calls Sam. So during this call, Sam tells Annie about this picture that's going around on social media of him. And she's like, what picture? Turns out it's a picture of him and another girl, like, being all lovey-dovey and stuff. And this is when he reveals that he has a new girlfriend. And then Sam pulls that I was gonna tell you bullshit. Like, yeah, sure, you were gonna tell me, yeah. And then they end up getting into a spat, and Annie voices how, you know, you moved on so easily, and I'm not okay with that. And then Sam counters that by saying, bro, it's been 6 months since we broke up. Like, you're still on that? Like a true boy would. Like, And then Annie fires back with, well, we were dating for 10 years, and you never asked me to marry you, and you blindsided me. And then Sam had the audacity to say, well, I just reached out as a courtesy to let you know that I'm dating someone else now. Like he was doing her a favor. Sam, don't piss me off. Do not piss me off. Like, sir, you dumped her. She had to leave and you got to stay and keep the apartment. And I just want to pause right here and say that Rachel, like the author Rachel Harrison, she really captured that post-breakup anger in this scene in the book for me. Especially dealing with an ex like Sam who is so nonchalant and changed at the drop of a hat. Like, ooh, I was so heated and I'm like, okay, Talia, remember this is a fictional book. It's fake. I was so mad. Kudos to Rachel. She brought that emotion out very well. So the minute Annie ends the call, Sophie appears at her front door. She's like, are you okay? Is everything okay? She gives her some tea to make her feel better, you know, and she goes back home. And this tea that Sophie gave Annie, it is made from mushrooms, okay? And I'm starting to think that they're those kind of mushrooms because Annie starts tripping. Like, she starts, you know, going on a ride. Like, Annie is on another planet and having a time. So it's the next chapter and the next morning, and Annie is throwing up everything but her childhood memories. The tea was supposed to make her feel better. Instead, it just gave her a really bad reaction. And Sophie's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I think I made the blend too strong. It wasn't supposed to make you sick, girl. And then this is where Annie tells us, the readers, that she may be depressed because she still misses Sam even after all of what happened yesterday. And at this point in the book, I was like, please tell me they're gonna do a cord cutting spell, because like Annie needs it bad. Like, she cannot seem to let this dude go. Like, no matter how many times he displays that he ain't shit, she's still like, oh, but I miss him. Get the candles out and do the spell, please. Next chapter, and Annie finally agrees to go on this double date that Jill wants her to, you know, be a part of. And so after work, she's getting coffee, or whenever, I don't know when this is, and she's talking to the coffee shop owner, Oscar. Now, he's one of the he's one of the people in the town that, you know, really don't like Sophie that much. And I didn't bring him up because he was introduced to us, like, you know, earlier in the book, but I didn't bring him up because, you know, it wasn't really important then, but it is now. And so while she's getting her coffee from Oscar, he's like, you know, you really shouldn't be going out in the woods like by yourself like that, especially not if you're going to Sophie's house. Oscar says people go in those woods and they never come out. And I'm like, that's not creepy. Annie goes over to Sophie's house and she tells Sophie what Oscar said about her. And Sophie reveals that Oscar's wife left, like disappeared a few years ago, and Oscar thinks that she had something to do with it. So when Oscar went to confront Sophie and basically threaten her, she was like, threaten me again, I'm gonna knock all your teeth out and wear it as jewelry. And I was like, what? While that is extreme, like, I get it, because how dare you, especially if I didn't have nothing to do with it, like, how dare you accuse me of the disappearance of your wife? Like, I would probably say the same thing, because, like, who are you? And after mulling over it for a few days, Annie's starting to think, like, okay, you know what, I don't want to go on this blind date anymore. I just kind of want to wallow to myself and, like, just be alone. But then she changes her mind because she's like, you know what, I deserve something good for once in a while, because, you know, I haven't really been happy since I moved. And I'm like, let's do something for me. So she changes her mind and she decides to go on the blind date. Next chapter, and it's time for the double date. So Annie shows up and her date and the vibes are trash. Her date, Pascal, is acting like he don't want to be there. And Jill's husband is there because, you know, it's a double date. And he is rude. He can't grasp the fact that Annie is a tall woman, so of course he's like, what sports did you play? Did you play basketball? Did you play volleyball? And being an Amazon woman myself, like, story of my life with those questions. Oh, you must be really good at basketball. You must be really good at volleyball. I gotta tell you a secret, I wasn't. Yeah, but Jill's husband is just like, he's so rude. So Annie decides to take a bathroom break to excuse herself from the misogyny and rudeness. Just when she's regretting going on this date, she sees Sophie writing a message to her alongside all the bathroom graffiti. She's reassuring her that everything's gonna be fine and just, you know, take charge of this date. Like, turn it around. Like, make it good for you, girl. Like, just take charge. So Annie goes back out and decides to bear it some more, and Annie has endured all of Jill's husband's rude ass remarks. He's just a misogynistic asshole. Like, ugh. And he keeps commenting on her body because, you know, Annie's like really skinny, you know? And his rude comments comes to a satisfying screeching halt when he starts throwing up blood and bones. and the bones get progressively bigger as each one comes out. Annie finds this hilarious, so she starts to bust out laughing. And of course, Jill and her husband aren't amused, they're terrified. And Annie leaves feeling liberated, and so like after coming home from this date, she's like dancing in the yard barefoot. The moon is full, she's singing a song, and then she finds her tenant, the other tenant in her apartment building, Lynn, who owns the apartment. She finds her like staring at her through the window. She's like, "Hi, Lynn," and she's like, closes the curtains on her, like she's like, But she doesn't care because Annie is just feeling herself. She's feeling so good right now. She's like, "I'm on top of the world, nothing can stop me." Next chapter, and Annie goes over to Sophie's house and she tells her about the date and what happened. And she brings up the bathroom writing, and Sophie's like, "I didn't write you a message in the bathroom. I don't know what you're talking about." And Annie doesn't know she's being like, she's pretending that she doesn't know because she thought it was her because of the bone thing too, like throwing up the bones and all that stuff. She's like, "Are you sure it wasn't you?" And Sophie was like, "I didn't do that." And Annie was like, "I thought it was you because you did the same thing with the spider, so what are you talking about?" That's when Sophie said that Annie did it herself. She was responsible for the bathroom writing and for making Jill's husband throw up the bones. She said Annie did it. And then Sophie's telling Annie, like, "There's only so much I can teach you about the world and about yourself, but it's your choice to believe." So is Annie a witch too? Has she been a witch this whole time? I was like, oh my god. I was like, what is happening? So it's the next chapter, and a few weeks go by, and everybody at Annie's job is avoiding her because Jill told them about the bone incident and how she thinks Annie did it. Well, she did. And then we get another iteration of how Annie cannot retain happiness if she's not in Sophie's presence. I'm like, oh, please grow up. You're too old to be acting like this, bro. You're so codependent for real. It's kind of sickening. Annie also befriends a spider named Ralph. And he is the cutest little thing ever. Now, I am terrified of spiders, but the relationship that Annie has with this spider is so adorable. I think it's the cutest. Ooh, bitch, that looks good. Sorry, I didn't. And of course, Ralph was a gift from Sophie. And the best part about Ralph is he's anti-Sam. He don't like Sam either. He's a girl's girl. Around this time in the book, Annie and Sophie are celebrating winter solstice together. This is random, but it's in the book. Sophie loves Britney Spears. Like, every time they listen to music in the book, they're playing Britney Spears. I just love that. I just had to mention that, sorry. So when they're dancing to Britney Spears, Sophie's like, "Annie, surrender everything for everything." And Annie's like, "Girl, I'm too drunk, I'm too twisted, like let's just dance." And then on New Year's Eve, they spend the entire day together. And when it's near midnight, Sophie asks Annie to promise that she's never gonna talk to Sam again or like interact with him, because she's like, "Girl, you can do better for yourself, and honestly, I want you to promise that you will not, you know, you won't go back to doing this again." And Annie's like, "Okay, I swear." Next chapter, and Annie's powers are making a bigger presence now. Sophie's teaching her how to, you know, make soap and tea and balms from scratch like a real woodland witch would. And she also gets a new look. It's giving like when Rapunzel like got that sickening ass bob at the end of the movie. It's not that short. She has her hair like went from like the middle of her back to like shoulder length, but you get what I'm saying. She looks great. Next chapter, and Valentine's Day is coming up, and Annie's not looking forward to it because, you know, she broke up with Sam, and then it's like one of her favorite holidays ever. So she's like, "I don't want to celebrate this year. I'm single and I'm hurt." Oh, wow, 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 wow. So Oscar is still warning Annie about Sophie, and he's like, "You need to get away from her." Annie's like, "Enough is enough," and she finally reveals herself to Oscar, and he's not happy about this because he's already like, "There's enough. We got enough going on with the one witch in this town. We can't have another one." And Annie's defending her friendship with Sophie. So Annie is starting to think that there's more to the story about, you know, Oscar and his wife and stuff, because she's like, okay, maybe she is hiding something because she wasn't upfront about the ghost situation, so what if she's hiding the rest of the truth with this disappearing wife story? And Annie is like, she's literally questioning everything at this point. Like, what if it was a mistake revealing herself to Oscar? Is Oscar judging her too now? Should she be ashamed of being associated with Sophie? Like, she's questioning everything. So Sophie ends up catching up with one of her friends from the beginning of the book. Her name's Nadia, and she was with her when she went to the fortune teller, the palm reader, on her birthday. They both got a reading done, and she's giving her like a whole like life update, or should I say love life update. And Nadia is like telling Annie she thinks that the psychic may be right because everything is going so well for her, but she forgot that, you know, Annie got a very bad reading, so she's not being too considerate of Annie's reading. And then after that little catch-up session is over, Annie gets a scare with thousands of spiders like forming outside of her house. I'm gonna up the ante today because I actually have jewelry to go with this book and this look. So I have these moon and star, moon and star earrings. I got them off of Cider, and I thrifted this little cool little amulet. Like, look at it. Oh wait, it's backwards, hold on. This cool little amulet, heart amulet, and it has like, the chain looks like a snake. It looks like a snake. And then I have a pentagram necklace from one of my Halloween costumes. I don't know if I'm gonna put both necklaces on, but we'll see what it looks like. Everything's silver, so it may come together. Next chapter, and Annie decides to go to the liquor store because, you know, everyone and everything is just sucking right now. So she finds it closed when she gets there, but she hears conversation going on nearby. So there's a small cottage, and she can hear Oscar and a few other townspeople, like, you know, whispering a little bit. And some of these townspeople are some people that she met in the beginning of the book. There's Rose, an older lady, saying that there's nothing to worry about, you know, and they're talking about her. They're talking about Annie, by the way. And Oscar says that Sophie is corrupting Annie. And Deidre, this other old lady, says that Annie, you know, she said that Annie's landlord or like tenant manager or whatever saw her dancing in the middle of the night. Remember when I brought that up? And she kind of like closed the curtains on her. These earrings also match my tattoo. I just thought it was And Rose and Deirdre are like kind of politely dismissing Oscar, like everything is fine, there's nothing to worry about. But Oscar is not letting up. Oscar is saying, like, you know, they're all okay with being under Sophie's thumb because they're afraid of her. And he's like, I won't let history repeat itself in this town. I'm like, what the f are you talking about, bro? Everyone, and of course everyone in this little meeting is disagreeing with him. Annie cannot believe what she's hearing, so she gets really upset and she ends up like crashing out the window, like with her powers and stuff. Annie is panicking and she doesn't know what to do, you know, hearing all the bad things that Oscar said about her and Sophie. And he said some really weird stuff about Sophie, like how all her enemies ended up dead. And she's like, well, wait, would that explain the ghosts in her house? Like, you know, who are they? And now Annie is questioning her relationship with Sophie once again. And what does Annie do in this moment of distress? What do you think she does? She freaking texts Sam! Ugh, like, girl, do better for yourself, please. And guess what? He texts back right away. And you know what else? You know what else? They say that they miss each other. Not Annie, like, still chasing him, only says that she misses him, but Sam was like, you know what? I miss you too. Miss Annie, come to the front. Now look, I was tolerating you being a little codependent, you know, and going through your breakup phase, okay? I was tolerating that. But I will not stand by and watch you become a homewrecker, because at this point, we as readers still think that, you know, Sam and this new girl are still dating, which they are. You're not gonna become a homewrecker, Miss Annie. No, ma'am. So it's the next chapter and the next day, and Sophie comes over to check on Annie. She's anxious because of what she overheard last night, and then on top of breaking her promise to Sophie that she would never talk to Sam ever again, so she's like on edge right now. Sophie just thinks that she had a hard time because it was Valentine's Day and she wasn't really able to celebrate it. And she's like, you know what? I'm not a fan of Sam or your like thirsty behavior towards Sam, but if you want to talk about your feelings about him or talk about him in general, I'm here to be your friend and listen. Sophie's just trying to be a good friend. And on that note, she doesn't tell her what happened last night. Annie decides to keep quiet about her and Sam talking. And so she's like, okay, you know what? I'm tired. I think you should go. And Sophie's like, she notices this, you know, kind of vibe about Annie, like something's not right. And so Sophie's like, okay. Her mood changes too. She's like, sums up, but I'ma go. So after Sophie leaves, Annie and Sam are talking on the phone with each other. And Sam has the nerve to be like, I miss you so much, can I come and see you? And she's like, yeah, of course. I'm like, ew, 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 no. And then Annie's like, well, what about Shannon? That's the new girlfriend. And Sam is like, it's not about her, it's about us. And at this point, all the red flags in the world have been waved, because what the hell? What is really going on? And then, you know, they make a plan to meet up and all that stuff. And Annie's been dreaming about this moment since they broke up, because she dreamed that one day they would get back together, but instead of feeling happy, she's a little salty. As she should, because like, girl, why are you acting this way over a man? Over a man that did you dirty at that. It's the next chapter, and with each passing day, Annie is becoming more and more excited to see Sam. And I'm just about ready to throw up at this point. I'm like, ew, why this? Why him? Why now? Like, why are you so excited to see the man that ripped your heart from your chest like it was nothing? She's also coming up with a cover story to tell Sophie so she doesn't suspect anything, because she knows how Sophie would react if she found out. And then that day when Sam is coming down, Annie takes Ralph, her little spider pet friend, to Sophie's house so that way he can't spy on Annie when Sam is there. So when she gets to Sophie's house, Annie is gifted a guitar, because in previous chapters we learned that Annie used to play, and Sophie's like, you know what, play for me, like I want to hear you play. Annie's trying to inch her way out the door, and that's when Sophie knows. She's like, okay girl, cut the bullshit. I know you've been lying to me. Sophie is pissed that Annie is still caught up on Sam. She's pissed that she lied, and she's also pissed that that Annie cannot see her full potential within herself. She's acting like a jealous girlfriend, to be honest. Like, she's acting way too possessive, and like, you know, it's very bitter. It's leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. So they start arguing, and Annie's like, I just want to be happy. And then Sophie's like, from the moment I met you, all I wanted was to help you and help you find your happiness. Annie's like, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm leaving. And Sophie's like, you're not going nowhere. It gets real scary real fast. So Ralph goes from like a regular sized spider to the size of like a freaking, I don't know, like a medium sized dog. Like that man is big. That man is big now. And so they both start chasing her. Sophie and Ralph, who is now the size of like a freaking, I don't know, labradoodle. They're chasing her through the house. Annie almost makes it out, but Ralph ends up blocking the damn exit, and he's like... And then during all of this, Sophie has the nerve to ask, why are you afraid of me? I don't know, maybe because you trapped me in your house and chased me? Just a wild guess. And while hiding from Sophie in the wine cellar, Annie comes face to face with all of the ghosts. Like, she's seen a couple here and there throughout the book, but she comes face to face with all of the ghosts at the same time. Annie then confronts Sophie about like the town gossip that she heard, especially what Oscar said about her. And she said she's only hurt people in self-defense. Like, she's only ever hurt people in order to protect herself. So they start arguing again, and Sophie calls her by a nickname that she's given her since they first met, which is Pet. She's been calling her Pet throughout the entire book, right? And Annie didn't realize until this moment how much she hated it because of what it represented. It represented the hold that Sophie had over her, the possession that she had over her, the ownership. And she was like, I'm not your pet. I was like, oh, not her snapping back. She's snapping back, oh my gosh. So Annie finally stands up for herself and to Sophie. Then Sophie turns into my least favorite character at this moment. She's like, if you want to leave, fine, go. But if you leave, just know you can never come back. Like, don't give me that abusive husband bullshit. Don't give me that toxic boyfriend bullshit. I'm like, Sophie, this is not who I've known you to be this whole book. Like, you're acting like Sam right now, Sophie. Like, oh, it made my toes itch. I hated it. And Annie calls her out. She's like, you know why people don't like you and people are scared of you? It's because you're a fucking witch. and I'm not being over dramatic, that's what she said in the book. It literally says f***ing witch. So Sophie starts to transform into like what we've all come to know what a witch looks like in the media, you know, green skin, ugly face, very scary appearance. And she's like, oh, you think I'm a witch? I'll show you a witch. And she starts transforming. It's real nasty and scary. Annie finally escapes the house, and this is the end of their friendship. So next chapter, it's the same day. This is right after Annie leaves Sophie's house, and Sam finally gets there, and they start catching up. So Annie suggests that they try again, and what she says just like makes my toes itch. Let me read it to y'all. Let me read it. Let me find a page, girl. I think we can make it work, I say. I think we should give it another shot. I'll try harder. I'll be better. Tell me what I need to fix and I'll do it. He laughs. That laugh again. It's a sterile laugh. Babe, he's supposed to be saying this stuff to you. You don't need to do anything. He's the one who f***ed up here. Like, Sam ain't shit for real. He's not. When will you see? And then Sam chalks it up to superficial shit. Like, you know, she was always in her pajamas and she needs to like take more pride in her appearance, which she admits to doing because, you know, she wasn't really want to dress up. But that's not the problem here. The problem here is that you're an asshole, Sam. Sam admits his wrongs too, but not before he, you know, brings up what Annie did wrong too. Things are going okay for a little bit until Annie finally realizes that Sam ain't shit. I'm like, thank goodness, finally the pieces have fell into place. Like, you see what we've all been seeing this entire time. And she's like, you know what? I don't want him no more. I'm like, this is how I was reading the book at this point. I was like, she realizes that her time away from Sam, you know, transformed her into a better person, a newer person. She had so much self-growth in the past during the time that they were, you know, separated from each other. Annie is now confident, independent, and won't settle for less, which I love that for her. Annie takes a minute to herself to like bask in her new self-discovery. She's in the bathroom, like, you know, getting her shit together. And then she comes out the bathroom to find Sam talking on the phone with Shannon. He was still with her at this point. I'm gonna read it. I don't know how much time passes, but when I open the bathroom door, Sam's no longer on the couch. I don't see him, but I hear him. He's talking to someone. Just guy stuff. Yeah. Miss you too. Tomorrow night? Yeah, but make reservations. They're always crowded. Okay, me too. Bye. Who is that? I ask, but I already know. He's standing in the kitchen with his phone in his hand. Guilty. Annie, he says, are you alright? I'm fine, I say. Actually, I'm feeling pretty incredible. For the first time in our relationship, I'm in control. And what makes it extra sweet is that he knows it. He's squirming in the corner. Ow, what's happening? His legs give out from underneath him and he falls to the floor. You're still with her, huh? I say. Shannon. Annie, what's happening? I ease up and he stops his wriggling. You didn't break up with her before coming to see me, did you? Tell me the truth. I say, reaching out my hand and pinching the air. He screams, clutching his kneecap. I release my fingers. No, he cries. I'm sorry. Insurance, I say. Smart. In case things didn't work out with us, you wouldn't end up alone. I wanted you, he says. I wanted things to work out between us. Ah! He's writhing around on the floor, his limbs twitching madly, his face grayly distorted. There's blood coming out of his eyes. Not in neat drops, not in tears, but in a steady stream. Annie! He screams. Blood begins to spray from his mouth now too. I close my eyes and take deep, unhurried breaths. If I can calm down, maybe I can make it stop. But it's hard to let go of my animosity at the moment. It's hard not to torture him when it's so easy. When I can. I open my eyes and he's turning a pale blue color. I admire it for a second, the color, before realizing he might be dying. I might be killing him. With that, he scrambles to his hands and knees, wheezing. I allow him to catch his breath. He manages to pull himself up and props himself against the fridge. What the fuck? He kept saying. What the fuck? I gave you so much of myself, I say, and you wasted me. His face, such pure, exquisite horror, such fear. I don't mind. He fears me because he is small. I will not meet him there. I will not shrink myself down to his size or anyone else's for their comfort, for their appeasement. I actually find it kind of amusing, his fear. Kind of funny. It's making me laugh. I laugh. No. I cackle. I believe we're done here, I tell him. Leave. He rushes, tripping over himself as he grabs his backpack. Sam, I say. He turns to me, a nervous glance over his shoulder. You never told me if you liked my hair. I go on cackling, though he doesn't seem to find it too humorous. I guess that's fair. Goodbye, I tell him, and thank you. With that, he's gone. I was so proud of Annie in that moment. I was like, as you absolutely should. He deserved that. She didn't do enough for me. Sorry. It's the second to last chapter, and Annie goes over to Sophie's house, and Sophie's like, didn't I tell you not to come back over here? Annie apologizes for what she did, but she also calls Sophie out. She was like, what you did was not okay, and you were wrong for giving me that ultimatum. So Sophie apologizes and they make up. No, sorry. This next chapter is the second to last chapter, sorry. So now it's Annie's birthday and the whole town is celebrating it. Like I said, Sophie and Annie have made up, and Annie thanks Sophie for showing her, you know, the power that she holds, and like how she just thanks her for helping her in this journey of self-empowerment, and all is right in the village. Last chapter, the epilogue. So a little bit of time has gone by. Annie's living her best life. She's been living her best life. And she's at the farmer's market when she runs into one of her former students. The student asks Annie if they want to catch up and get coffee. Annie agrees, and she's like, wait till Sophie meets this one. And that's how the book ends. Annie's excited for Sophie to meet this person that Annie's known once upon a time. That's the end of Cackle. Like, this is just, look how aesthetically pleasing this is. Like, with my face. Oh my god. No, like, wow. So, that is the book, and here's the finished look. Do we like it? I think I love it. I think I love it. Complete with my sun, moon, and star earrings with the purple amethyst there, and then my pentagram Nicholas. So now let's get to the fan cast. This is my favorite portion of these videos. So I do a fan cast, or I've started to do a fan cast for my reading Rouge, just because, like I always say, if I can see the book playing out like a movie in my head, it would be a great movie, and that just makes it an even better book. So for Annie, if I were to cast Annie, I would put up Hunter Schafer for this role because of like the physical description, you know, tall, skinty, quaint. I feel like she can bring to life that, you know, lack of confidence that Annie has for most of the book, and I feel like she'd just be really good in this role. Yeah. And for Sophie, like simply based off of like physical description, I would say Kate Siegel, her from Haunting of Hill House. She played Theo. And I'm just like, this gives. Like, does it not give? It gives. Like, you know, it just gives Sophie. It just gives Sophie. She would be a great Sophie. And for Sam, I would choose Dylan O'Brien. I feel like he could really bring that asshole, vain type of, you know, personality to life. So, Dylan O'Brien for Sam. And for Oscar, you know, the one townsperson that was like really scared of Sophie and trying to like deter Annie away from her, I would say James Marsden, because he's a little on the older side, and Oscar is described to be on the older side, and he is a dad to a teenage son. So I feel like James Marsden could embody that. Oh, hello. And for like the side characters like Rose and Deidre, you know, the townspeople that Annie met at the farmer's market, the old woman. For Rose, I would put up Sally Field, you know, just because who doesn't love Sally Field? And for Deirdre, I would put Jessica Lange, because I feel Deirdre's like the more standoffish, kind of skeptical one, and I feel Jessica Lange can really, you know, push that through the character. She can just make it come to life. And then for Nadia, the person that was with Annie at the beginning of the book, for the palm reading on her birthday, I would say Vanessa Morgan, just to add some diversity in there, because like most of these people, if I'm not mistaken, they sounded like they were white, so I'm gonna put a splash of color in there, okay? Vanessa Morgan for Nadia. So now that I've done the fan cast, I want to talk about like a few messages that I you know, got from this book. There's a really great element of women empowerment that I got from reading this. It's a lot of, you know, not only the camaraderie between women, but being able to find that camaraderie in general. Rachel Harrison also did a really good job of talking about self-love and self-growth, and we see Annie battle with that this entire book, and how good it feels to finally get there in that growth and that journey of self-love and self-growth and self-actualization. It's amazing. And then the message of toxic relationships was also very heavy. It wasn't like disturbingly heavy, but it was a big chunk of the book. And I'm not only talking about Sam and Annie, because the whole time Sam was acting as if the breakup was Annie's fault. You know, because she didn't dress up, she didn't dress sexy enough, and then they were more like friends rather than lovers, and she didn't try, which is bullshit. But also the toxic relationship that Sophie and Annie had, because there were times where it would like shine out of Sophie that she was being toxic, because she would overstep and be like, I'm just trying to help you, I want you to be happy. But really, you know, like it was too much. And then we saw that how toxic that turned when Sophie and Annie got into that argument. And it's just like, I used to be that friend. I will take full accountability for that right now. I mean, I've been doing it, but like, I take full accountability of I used to be that friend. I used to be Sophie. I just want what's best for you. I want you to be happy. I want you to be your best self. But like, the way that I went about it was very toxic. And I saw a little of myself in Sophie. Not in a good way, but I saw that. And I'm like, oh. That was like holding a mirror up to the ugliest parts of myself, and I didn't realize it until I was writing the notes for this video, and I was like, ew, not you making me realize. No, but taking accountability for that, especially seeing a character like that who I used to act like that like back in my high school days, and it was just a really unhealthy, toxic thing. Yeah, but overall, I give this book a 10 out of 10. Highly recommend. I think it is so great. Rachel Harrison, you did that. I'm so excited to read another, you know, work of hers. If y'all don't remember my last book haul that I did, I got another book from Rachel Harrison called Such Sharp Teeth, and I'm excited to read that one. Not like right after this one, but maybe soon. So yeah. So that concludes our video for today. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and comment, you know, anything, I guess, about the book or what you thought about the book, and if you've read it. And if you haven't read it and you watch this whole video, like, tell me what you think. I definitely recommend that you read it for yourself though, so you can like feel all the things that you need to feel and everything like that. And subscribe if you want to. I'll see y'all on the next go round. Okay, bye.